In the quietest moments, when the world falls silent and your thoughts become whispers, have you ever wondered about the true nature of your consciousness, that ineffable quality that makes you uniquely you, that witnesses your life unfolding, that feels, that knows? What is this mysterious presence that resides within, yet somehow transcends your physical form? For centuries, humanity has contemplated this enigma, this experience of being that defies material explanation. Today, we venture into these profound waters together, guided by decades of research into one of life's greatest mysteries, the continuity of consciousness beyond physical death. The conventional understanding tells us that consciousness is merely a product of the brain, a complex biochemical reaction, a symphony of neurons firing in sequence, nothing more than an emergent property of physical matter. When the brain ceases to function, consciousness, by this logic, must inevitably extinguish like a flame deprived of oxygen. This materialist view has dominated scientific thought for generations, offering a seemingly rational framework for understanding our existence. But what if this perspective represents not the culmination of human understanding, but rather its limitation? Dr. Raymond Moody's pioneering research into near-death experiences has unveiled patterns so consistent, so transformative, that they challenge our fundamental assumptions about the nature of consciousness itself. Across cultures, across belief systems, across the entire human spectrum, individuals who have ventured to the threshold between life and death return with accounts that converge in astonishing ways. They speak not of extinction, not of nothingness, but of expansion, a liberation of awareness that transcends the confines of the physical body. Consider for a moment the metaphor of a radio and its relationship to radio waves. The radio itself doesn't create the music you hear. It merely receives and translates signals that exist independently, that permeate the very space around you, even when no device is present to detect them. What if our brains function in a similar way? Not as generators of consciousness, but as sophisticated receivers, biological instruments tuned to capture and translate a consciousness that exists beyond the boundaries of our physical form. This is not merely poetic speculation. The testimonies collected over decades of research into near-death experiences suggest that when the brain's normal functioning is interrupted, when its ability to filter and limit consciousness is temporarily suspended, many individuals report not a diminishing of awareness, but a remarkable expansion. They describe consciousness freed from its physical constraints, experiencing reality with a clarity and comprehension that makes ordinary perception seem like viewing the world through a keyhole. If these accounts hold truth, if consciousness is not produced by the brain but rather channeled through it, then what does this reveal about who and what we truly are? The implications are profound and far-reaching. It suggests that your essence, the core of your being, is not contingent upon your physical form. The you that experiences, that knows itself to exist, may be expressed through your body but is not contained by it, not created by it, and therefore not extinguished when the body eventually fails. This understanding challenges the very foundation of our fear of death. For if consciousness is not a product of physical processes, but rather a fundamental aspect of reality itself, something that the physical brain accesses rather than creates, then the cessation of bodily functions need not mean the end of your awareness, your essence, your you-ness. It suggests instead a transition, a transformation, a change in the form through which consciousness expresses itself. Think about the way water changes states, from solid to liquid to vapor, while maintaining its essential nature. Ice melts. Water evaporates, but the H2O molecules remain unchanged in their fundamental composition. What if consciousness undergoes a similar transformation when freed from its physical housing? Not an ending, but a phase transition, a change of state that preserves the essential while shedding the temporary. The reports from those who have glimpsed beyond the veil of physical existence consistently describe a sensation not of loss, but of expansion. They speak of awareness that extends beyond the boundaries of individual identity, while paradoxically retaining a sense of self. They describe consciousness freed from the limitations of space and time, yet still continuous with the person they were. This apparent contradiction points to a profound truth, that what we call death may be less an ending than a metamorphosis. In the coming moments, we will explore this concept more deeply, examining how our understanding of consciousness as something that transcends physical form reshapes not just our conception of death, but of life itself. For if your true nature extends beyond your temporary physical expression, then you are already part of something far more vast and enduring than you may have realized. The boundaries that seem to separate you from the rest of existence, that create the illusion of isolation, of disconnection, may be more permeable, more provisional than they appear. As we continue this journey together, I invite you to approach these ideas not just intellectually, but experientially. For the ultimate truth about consciousness cannot be fully grasped by the rational mind alone. It must be intuited, sensed, and recognized at a level deeper than thought. Let us venture forward with both critical inquiry and open-hearted wonder, for we are exploring nothing less than the deepest mystery of our existence, the eternal nature of consciousness itself. As we journey deeper into this exploration, let's consider what binds us so tightly to our physical identity. This body, this name, this collection of memories and experiences we call me. From the moment of birth, we learn to associate our consciousness with our physical form. We look in the mirror and think, that's me. We feel pain in our bodies and say, I hurt. We conflate our essential nature with this temporary vehicle that carries us through the material world. And from this identification arises perhaps our deepest fear, that when the body ceases to function, we too will cease to be. But those who have experienced the threshold between life and death tell a different story. They speak of a moment when the attachment to physical form falls away, not with terror, but with an inexplicable relief. They describe witnessing their physical bodies from a perspective of expanded awareness, observing medical professionals working to revive them, hearing conversations in distant rooms, seeing loved ones grieving, all while experiencing a profound sense that the essential I remains intact, despite its separation from the body. I was not my body, they often report with conviction. I was still myself, my thoughts, my consciousness, my awareness, but I was free from the limitations I had always associated with being alive. This consistent pattern suggests that what we fear as extinction may instead be liberation, a butterfly emerging from the chrysalis of physical existence. Consider the metamorphosis of a caterpillar into a butterfly, a transformation so complete that the creature's very form becomes unrecognizable. Inside the chrysalis, the caterpillar doesn't simply grow wings, it undergoes a profound dissolution. Its body breaks down into a cellular soup from which the butterfly's new form emerges. To the caterpillar, this process might seem like death, the end of everything it has known. Yet the consciousness, the essential nature of the being, continues uninterrupted through this radical transformation. The butterfly retains no memory of crawling, yet it is a continuation of the same life, the same essence, now expressed through a different form. This natural metamorphosis serves as a powerful metaphor for what happens to consciousness during the transition we call death. The accounts of those who have glimpsed beyond this threshold suggest a similar process, a shedding of limitations, rather than an ending of existence. They describe a gradual awareness of separating from physical form, not with the trauma we might expect, but with an overwhelming sense of rightness, of returning to a more natural state of being. It was like taking off a tight, uncomfortable suit I'd been wearing for so long that I'd forgotten it wasn't actually part of me, one experiencer related. I felt myself expanding beyond the boundaries I had always accepted as the edges of my being, and yet paradoxically I was more myself than I had ever been before. This expansion of consciousness follows a remarkably consistent pattern across thousands of documented near-death experiences. Initially, there is the realization of being separate from the physical body, often accompanied by a sensation of floating or rising. This gives way to an awareness of moving through what many describe as a tunnel or passageway, leading toward an extraordinary light. But it's what happens next that speaks most profoundly to the transformative nature of consciousness. Experiencers report not just seeing this light, but being drawn into it, merging with it in a way that transforms their awareness. They describe an expansion of consciousness that transcends the limitations of individual identity, while paradoxically preserving their essential sense of self. It's as if the drop of water that was their individual consciousness merges with the ocean, becoming part of something infinitely larger, while still maintaining a kind of continuity with what it was before. I was still me, they insist, but I was also so much more than the limited self I had identified with throughout my physical life. This apparent contradiction of simultaneously becoming vast while remaining individual suggests that our true nature may be both personal and universal, both unique and connected to everything that exists. Language strains to capture these experiences, for our words are designed to describe physical reality, not transcendent states of consciousness. How does one describe becoming unbounded? How can we articulate an experience of consciousness freed from the limitations of body and brain? The terms we use, expanding, merging, transcending, are approximations at best, shadows cast by experiences that exist beyond the reach of ordinary language. Yet despite these linguistic limitations, those who return from the threshold carry with them a profound certainty about what they've experienced. It wasn't a dream or a hallucination, they often insist. It was more real than anything I've ever experienced in ordinary life. This conviction, coupled with the ability to accurately report events and conversations that occurred while they were clinically dead, challenges the notion that these experiences are merely the product of a dying brain. What if, instead, these accounts offer us glimpses of consciousness transitioning to another mode of existence, one that has always been our true state, temporarily forgotten during our physical incarnation? What if the sense of returning that many experiencers describe is actually a reflection of having briefly remembered our more fundamental nature? The consistency of these reports across cultural and religious boundaries suggests something universal about this process of transformation. People from vastly different backgrounds, holding widely divergent beliefs about the afterlife, nonetheless describe remarkably similar experiences. This convergence points to something fundamental about consciousness itself, something that transcends our cultural conditioning and expectations. As we consider these patterns of transformation, we're invited to reconsider not just what happens after death, but the very nature of what we are while alive. If consciousness can exist independent of the brain, if our essential nature transcends our physical form, then even now, in this moment, we are more than the limited selves we typically identify with. We are, in a sense, already participating in that larger field of consciousness, even as we experience ourselves through the focusing lens of physical existence. This recognition doesn't diminish the importance of our human experience. Rather, it places it within a larger context. Like a wave that is simultaneously itself and the ocean, we are both individual expressions of consciousness and part of its unified field. Our physical lives, with all their challenges and joys, their limitations and possibilities, are not separate from our eternal nature, but rather a particular expression of it, a temporary focusing of the infinite into finite form. As we continue, our exploration will turn our attention to another profound aspect of these transformative experiences, the way they reveal consciousness existing beyond the constraints of linear time. For if consciousness is not produced by the brain, but merely channeled through it, then it may not be bound by the temporal limitations that govern physical existence. And this insight offers yet another perspective on the eternal nature of who we truly are. What is time to consciousness? This question emerges naturally as we explore the nature of awareness beyond physical form. In our everyday experience, time appears linear and absolute, flowing from past to present to future in an unalterable sequence. We measure our lives in years, mark our days in hours, and believe that time moves forward regardless of our perception of it. But the testimony of those who have experienced consciousness beyond the brain tells a remarkably different story. In the space beyond physical constraints, they report, time as we understand it simply does not exist. There was no time. They often say with a mixture of wonder and certainty. Everything, past, present, future, existed simultaneously. This description of timelessness appears with such consistency across thousands of near-death accounts that it suggests something fundamental about the relationship between consciousness and temporality. Consider the possibility that linear time is not an absolute reality, but rather a construct of consciousness when filtered through the brain, a necessary ordering mechanism that allows us to function within physical reality. Just as our eyes perceive only a narrow band of the electromagnetic spectrum, perhaps our brains perceive only a narrow slice of an eternal now, creating the illusion of sequential moments where there may in fact be only timeless presence. This perspective is not entirely foreign to modern physics. Einstein's theory of relativity already demonstrated that time is not absolute but relative, capable of stretching and compressing depending on factors like gravity and velocity. Quantum mechanics further challenges our conventional understanding of time with phenomena like entanglement, where particles separated by vast distances appear to communicate instantaneously, transcending the limitations of time and space. What if these scientific insights are glimpses of the same reality that near-death experiencers encounter directly? A reality where time, as we understand it, is revealed to be a useful but ultimately limited construct. What if, beyond the filtering mechanism of the brain, consciousness naturally exists in a state where all moments are accessible, where the artificial boundaries between past, present, and future dissolve? Those who have glimpsed beyond report exactly this. They describe a perspective from which they could access any moment of their lives with equal immediacy, not as memories viewed from the present, but as experiences directly revisited, as vivid and immediate as when they first occurred. More remarkably still, many report accessing moments yet to come, viewing future possibilities with the same clarity as past events. "I saw my entire life," they often say, "not in sequence, but all at once. I could focus on any moment and experience it fully, understanding its connections to every other moment." This life review, reported by countless experiencers, transcends ordinary memory. It involves not just seeing but re-experiencing events from multiple perspectives, including, profoundly, the perspective of others affected by one's actions. This phenomenon suggests that consciousness, when freed from physical constraints, naturally perceives from a vantage point outside linear time, a perspective from which the artificial boundaries between past, present, and future dissolve into a unified field of experience. If this is true, then the consciousness that is your essential nature already exists in this timeless state, even as you experience yourself moving through time in your physical form. What does this reveal about the eternal nature of consciousness? If awareness transcends time, if it naturally exists in a state where all moments are simultaneously accessible, then it cannot be extinguished by physical death, which is itself merely an event in time. The end of the physical body becomes not an ending of consciousness, but simply another event within the timeless field of awareness, no more capable of destroying your essential nature than any other moment in your timeline. This perspective transforms our understanding of mortality. Death, from this vantage point, is not an endpoint but a transition viewable from the timeless perspective of consciousness itself. The fear of extinction that haunts human existence stems from our identification with a time-bound physical form rather than with the timeless awareness that is our more fundamental nature. Yet amidst this timelessness, something remarkable persists, the sense of identity, of being uniquely oneself. Those who experience consciousness beyond the brain consistently report that despite this radical shift in perception, despite the dissolution of temporal boundaries, they remain unmistakably themselves. This continuity of identity suggests that something essential about who we are transcends not only our physical form, but also our location in time. "I was still me," they insist, "but a more complete version of myself, as if I were experiencing my consciousness without the filters and limitations I'd grown accustomed to." This expanded, yet continuous sense of self challenges our assumption that identity is merely the product of accumulated memories and experiences, arranged in temporal sequence. It suggests instead that our essential nature, the I that knows itself to exist, is neither created by time nor limited by it. This paradox of timeless awareness that somehow maintains continuity of identity points to a profound truth about consciousness itself. Perhaps our true nature exists at a level more fundamental than either time or individuality, as we conventionally understand them. Perhaps what we experience as our personal consciousness is actually a localized expression of a more universal awareness, like a wave that is simultaneously itself and the ocean. The implications of this perspective extend far beyond our understanding of death. If consciousness naturally exists outside of time, then in the most essential sense, we are already eternal. The awareness that is reading these words right now, that knows itself to exist in this moment, this awareness is an expression of something that transcends the temporal boundaries of birth and death, beginning and ending. Language strains to capture these concepts, for our words are designed to describe experiences within time rather than beyond it. How does one speak of timelessness while using a medium that unfolds sequentially? How can we articulate a state of being that exists outside the very framework within which communication occurs? We are like two-dimensional beings attempting to describe the experience of three dimensions, using tools adequate for our familiar reality, but insufficient for the expanded state we're trying to convey. And yet, despite these limitations, the testimony of those who have glimpsed beyond remains remarkably consistent. Across cultures, across belief systems, across the entire spectrum of human diversity, those who have experienced consciousness beyond the brain describe not extinction but expansion, not the end of awareness, but its liberation from constraints, including the constraint of linear time. This convergence suggests that they are glimpsing something fundamental about the nature of consciousness itself, not culturally constructed afterlife beliefs, but the actual experience of awareness when it is no longer filtered through the limiting lens of the physical brain. Their accounts offer us a window into what may be our true state of being, temporarily forgotten during our immersion in physical reality. As we integrate these insights about the timeless nature of consciousness, we begin to recognize that eternity is not something that begins after death, but something in which we already participate. The awareness that knows itself to exist in this moment, your awareness, reading these words, may be an expression of something that has always existed, and always will, something that cannot be extinguished because it was never born in the conventional sense. In the next stage of our exploration, we'll examine more deeply the relationship between form and essence, between the temporary expressions of consciousness that we call our lives and the eternal awareness that manifests through them. For if consciousness is timeless by nature, then our physical existence takes on a very different meaning than we typically assume. Rather than defining the boundaries of our being, perhaps our human lives represent a particular focus of an awareness that extends infinitely beyond them, like a beam of light passing through a prism, temporarily taking on color and direction while remaining essentially luminous. This dance between form and essence, between our temporary physical expression and our eternal nature, lies at the heart of our exploration. Perhaps the greatest fear we face as humans is not simply the cessation of existence, but the loss of what we consider to be ourselves, our unique identity, our accumulated experiences, our distinctive way of being in the world. We cling to the specific arrangement of traits and memories we call me, terrified by the prospect of its dissolution. But what if this fear arises from a fundamental misunderstanding of what we truly are? The consistent testimony of near-death experiences suggests a profound distinction between the ego, the temporary constructed self that identifies with physical form and personal history, and the essential consciousness that witnesses and experiences life through these temporary vehicles. This essential consciousness, they suggest, is not extinguished when the ego dissolves. Rather, it expands into a more authentic expression of its true nature. I felt myself letting go, many report, not with fear, but with an overwhelming sense of coming home. This letting go is not an annihilation, but a recognition, an understanding that what they truly are transcends the limited identity they had previously clung to. The dissolution of the ego reveals not nothingness but wholeness, an awareness that has always been present beneath the surface of their constructed self. This perspective invites us to reconsider what we mean when we say I or me. Is the true self the collection of memories, preferences, and personality traits that we typically identify with? Or is it the awareness that witnesses these ever-changing aspects of experience, the consciousness that remains constant while all else transforms? Near-death accounts consistently point to the latter, suggesting that our deepest identity resides not in the content of consciousness, but in its essential nature. Think of consciousness as the screen upon which the movie of your life plays. The characters, scenes, and plot lines change continuously, but the screen itself remains unaltered, neither stained by tragedy nor enhanced by joy, yet intimately present to every moment of the unfolding story. In ordinary life, we identify with the movie, forgetting the screen that makes the entire experience possible. But in extraordinary states, whether induced by near-death experiences, profound meditation, or other glimpses beyond ordinary awareness, the screen of consciousness itself becomes visible. And in that recognition lies a freedom beyond imagining. Near-death experiences offer a particularly dramatic revelation of this distinction between form and essence. They provide a window into what happens when the attachment to form is temporarily suspended, allowing consciousness to experience itself more directly. What these experiences reveal is not the extinction of identity, but its expansion, a recognition that what we truly are encompasses, but transcends the specific expression we call our life. This expanded perspective doesn't negate the significance of our individual expression. Rather, it places it within a larger context. Like a wave that is simultaneously itself and the ocean, we are both individual expressions of consciousness and participants in its unified field. Our physical lives, with all their joys and sorrows, their triumphs and challenges, are not separate from our eternal nature, but rather particular manifestations of it, unique patterns in the kaleidoscope of infinite awareness. Another consistent aspect of near-death accounts is the profound sense of interconnection they reveal. Beyond the physical boundaries that seem to separate us from each other and from the world, experiencers describe a reality in which consciousness is recognized as the common essence of all existence. I understood that we are all expressions of the same awareness, they often report, unique in our manifestation, but identical in our essence. This recognition dissolves the illusion of separation that characterizes ordinary human existence, the sense of being isolated within the boundaries of individual form. From the expanded perspective glimpsed during these experiences, the connections between all expressions of consciousness become not just an abstract concept, but a directly perceived reality. Others are recognized not as separate beings, but as different perspectives within the same field of awareness, like eyes looking out from different locations within the same body. This interconnected view of consciousness challenges our conventional understanding of identity and relationship. It suggests that beneath the apparent separateness of our physical forms lies a profound unity, not just a theoretical oneness, but an actual sharing in the same fundamental awareness. The boundaries we perceive between ourselves and others, between humanity and the natural world, between all expressions of existence, these boundaries are revealed to be more permeable, more provisional than they appear in ordinary perception. If this interconnected model of consciousness is accurate, then what we call death takes on a radically different meaning. Rather than representing an endpoint or extinction, it becomes simply a change in the form through which consciousness expresses itself, a transition from one mode of being to another within the same continuous field of awareness. The essential you that experiences life through your current form is not created by that form, and therefore not extinguished when the form changes. Consider how this perspective transforms our understanding of mortality. If consciousness is the fundamental reality and physical forms are temporary expressions of that consciousness, then death becomes not an ending but a metamorphosis, a change in the vehicle through which awareness experiences itself. Just as water transforms from solid to liquid to vapor while maintaining its essential nature, consciousness continues uninterrupted while the forms through which it expresses may change. This recognition doesn't erase the grief we feel at the loss of loved ones in their familiar forms. The specific expression that we knew and cherished is indeed transformed, and we naturally mourn its passing. But the deeper understanding offered by near-death experiences suggests that what we truly love in another, the essence that shines through their temporary form, continues uninterrupted, even as its expression changes. Dying was like waking up, many experiencers report. I realized that what I had thought of as life was actually a kind of dream, a temporary limited perspective within a much vaster reality. This awakening doesn't negate the value of the dream, but rather places it within a larger context, recognizing the physical life as one chapter in an ongoing story rather than the entirety of existence. The beauty of temporal existence lies precisely in its temporality, in the precious uniqueness of each passing moment, each fleeting expression of the eternal. From the perspective of timeless awareness, the physical life is not diminished by its impermanence but rather made more exquisite by it, like a sunset whose beauty is inseparable from its transience, or a musical note whose poignancy depends upon its passing. This dance between the eternal and the temporal, between the unchanging awareness and its ever-changing expressions, offers a more nuanced understanding of both life and death. It suggests that we are simultaneously beings in time, experiencing the unfolding sequence of moments that constitute a human life, and beyond time, participating in the timeless awareness that witnesses this unfolding. In this paradoxical both and perspective lies a profound liberation. We need not choose between identifying with our temporal, changing nature and recognizing our eternal essence. We are both the wave and the ocean, both the specific expression and the awareness that manifests through all expressions. Our lives matter precisely because they are unique manifestations of the infinite, irreplaceable patterns in the kaleidoscope of consciousness. As we approach the conclusion of our exploration, let us turn our attention to how this understanding of consciousness might transform our experience of living. For if we are indeed eternal by nature, if our essence continues beyond the changes of form that we call birth and death, then how might we live differently in recognition of this truth? How might our priorities shift, our fears diminish, our capacity for presence and wonder expand? These questions guide us into the final phase of our journey together. What purpose does the physical journey serve if our essential nature is eternal? This question naturally arises as we explore the continuity of consciousness beyond form. If we are already complete and unbounded in our fundamental nature, why incarnate into limitation? Why trade the expansive awareness glimpsed in near-death experiences for the constraints of physical existence? The testimonies of those who have ventured beyond the threshold suggest a profound answer, one that transforms our understanding of what it means to be human. They speak of recognizing in that expanded state that physical life offers something precious and irreplaceable, the opportunity to experience the infinite through the lens of the finite, to know eternity through the portal of time. I understood why we choose to be born, one experiencer related. Only within the limitations of physical form can certain qualities of consciousness be developed and expressed. Only through the resistance of matter can the soul grow in particular ways. This insight reveals physical existence not as a fall from grace or a separation from our true nature, but as a chosen immersion, a deliberate focusing of infinite, awareness into finite expression for the purpose of growth, creativity, and love. Think of it as similar to how a writer deliberately constrains infinite possibilities into the specific form of a story. These constraints of character, setting, conflict don't diminish the creative process, but rather enable it. The limitations provide the necessary tension through which meaning emerges. In a parallel way, the constraints of physical existence create the conditions through which consciousness can explore and develop aspects of itself that would remain dormant in an unconstrained state. This understanding reconciles the apparent contradiction between our limited human experience and the boundless awareness reported in transcendent states. These are not opposing realities, but complementary expressions of the same consciousness, like the focused beam of a flashlight and the diffuse radiance of the sun. Each offers something the other cannot, and together they form a more complete expression of what consciousness is capable of experiencing. From this perspective, physical life becomes not an exile from our true nature, but a chosen adventure within it, a journey undertaken not out of necessity, but out of creative desire. The forgetting of our eternal nature that accompanies birth into physical form is not a punishment, but a prerequisite, enabling us to fully immerse in the human experience without the constant awareness of what lies beyond it. This forgetting allows for genuine surprise, authentic discovery, real growth, experiences that would be impossible if we maintained full awareness of our expansive nature. Like a novelist who becomes so immersed in creating a character that they temporarily forget themselves, we dive so completely into our human roles that we lose sight of the greater awareness that chose this particular expression. Near-death experiences offer a momentary lifting of this veil, a brief remembering of what we truly are beyond the character we're playing, and those who return come back with a transformed relationship to their physical lives, no longer completely identified with their limited roles, yet fully committed to playing them with greater awareness. They often describe living with one foot in each world, engaged in the temporal while conscious of the eternal. This integrated perspective transforms how we might approach our remaining time in physical form. If we recognize ourselves as eternal consciousness, temporarily expressed through finite form, then the fear that drives so much of human behavior, the terror of extinction that lurks beneath our frantic accumulation and achievement, begins to dissolve. In its place emerges a profound freedom to be fully present to the adventure of being human, knowing that nothing essential can be lost. I no longer fear death, nearly all returning experiences report, but I've developed a much deeper appreciation for life. This seeming paradox makes perfect sense when we understand that it is our fear of ending that prevents us from fully beginning, from committing wholeheartedly to the experience of being alive in this moment, in this form. When we recognize that what we truly are cannot be extinguished, we become free to pour ourselves completely into each passing moment of our temporal expression. This fearlessness manifests not as recklessness or detachment from life, but as a more profound engagement with it. Liberated from the desperate need to make our mark on eternity, recognizing that we are already eternal by nature, we become free to focus on what truly matters, the quality of presence we bring to each moment, the depth of connection we forge with others, the authentic expression of our unique perspective within the vast field of consciousness. Near-death experiencers consistently report a radical shift in priorities after their glimpse beyond. Material success, social status, competitive achievement, these lose their grip on the returning consciousness, replaced by a deeper valuing of love, authenticity, compassion, and growth. I realize that the only thing that really matters is how much love we give and receive, they often report. Everything else is just details. This reprioritization stems not from a moral imperative, but from direct recognition of what is most real. In the expanded state of awareness, love is perceived not as an emotion or a choice, but as the fundamental nature of consciousness itself, the substrate from which all existence arises. Returning to physical life with even a memory of this recognition transforms one's entire orientation to existence. The evidence from near-death research suggests that this transformation is neither temporary nor superficial. Decades after their experiences, individuals continue to exhibit profound changes in their relationship to death, their priorities in life, their sense of purpose, and their capacity for compassion. This persistence indicates that what they glimpsed was not a momentary hallucination, but a recognition of something fundamentally true about the nature of consciousness, a truth that, once glimpsed, cannot be forgotten even when normal physical awareness returns. Consider what it might mean to live with this recognition, to move through your days with the understanding that your consciousness is not produced by your brain, but merely channeled through it, not confined to your physical form, but expressed through it. How might this transform your relationship to the inevitable changes, including death, that characterize temporal existence? Perhaps most profoundly, this understanding offers a reconciliation between the individual and universal aspects of consciousness. We need not choose between recognizing ourselves as unique expressions with particular perspectives and acknowledging our participation in the unified field of awareness. We are both the wave and the ocean, both the specific manifestation and the infinite potential from which all manifestations arise. In this both and perspective lies a profound liberation. The fear of losing our individuality, of being absorbed into a homogeneous oneness that erases our unique perspective, is revealed as unfounded. Those who glimpse beyond consistently report that they retain their sense of identity even as they experience expansion into a more universal awareness. I was still unmistakably myself, they insist, but I was also so much more than the limited self I had identified with. This paradoxical maintenance of individuality within unity suggests a model of consciousness that honors both uniqueness and connection, both the specific perspective that is you and the universal awareness that expresses through all perspectives. It's not that your individual consciousness is extinguished upon physical death. Rather, it opens into the fuller awareness that has always been its source and substance. The reports of those who return from the threshold carry an unmistakable message of hope, not the hope for some future salvation or reward, but the recognition that what we fear to lose has never been at risk. The essential you, the awareness that knows itself to exist through all, the changes of body and mind, is revealed as inextinguishable, not because it endures forever in time, but because its nature transcends time itself. This recognition doesn't diminish the poignancy of our temporal journey, but rather enhances it. Each moment becomes more precious, not less, when seen as a unique expression of eternal awareness, choosing to know itself through the specific perspective that is you. The inevitable transitions of life, including physical death, take their place as parts of this ongoing expression, rather than threats to your essential being. As we complete our exploration together, I invite you to consider your own relationship to these profound questions. Beyond belief or disbelief, beyond acceptance or rejection, there lies the possibility of holding these perspectives as worthy of contemplation, as invitations to examine the fundamental nature of what you are. For in this contemplation itself, regardless of the conclusions you reach, lies a kind of freedom. The freedom that comes from questioning the assumptions that unconsciously shape our experience of being alive. Perhaps the greatest gift offered by near-death research is not a definitive answer to the question of what happens after death, but rather an expansion of possibility, a widening of what we consider potentially real. In this expanded field of possibility, we are invited to recognize that consciousness itself may be far more vast, more fundamental, and more continuous than our conventional understanding allows. Whether you embrace or question the perspective offered here, I invite you to carry forward a single insight, that you, the awareness reading these words right now, may be an expression of something that cannot be extinguished when your current form changes, not because you will endure forever in time, but because what you most essentially are transcends time itself. In this recognition lies not just comfort in the face of mortality, but a profound invitation to live more fully, more authentically, and more compassionately in each passing moment of your unique and irreplaceable human journey,